Fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I am your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds, and I hope you're all having a good one out there. It is officially July as of me recording today, and I am joined by a bud today, Mr. Tariq Patel. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's the beginning of summer. I just graduated, moving back up to Canada, so I'm feeling good. A bit busy, but otherwise feeling good.
That's good, man. Well, congratulations on the graduation, and I know that, and we'll get to it in a bit. But last week I had our mutual friend Flake on the podcast, and he mentioned that you'll be living up basically a stone's throw away from him. I bet you're
Yep.
stoked for that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a ton of fun. Just a lot of Canadians that I've been friends with over the years and not lost contact with, but have been further away, so we can't hang out as much as we used to. Especially with COVID, I haven't been up actually since the pandemic started. So I expect to see a whole new landscape. And something I usually like to do is I used to host like barbecues or like annual get togethers at my place or semi annual. So one in the summer and then one around Christmas. So if you're up north, feel free to swing by. It's probably going to be in a couple of weeks, and we're going to do some barbecuing, some cubing in Magic, and then even some Flesh and Blood now that I got some Canadian Flesh and Blood friends. So it should be a fun time.
Yeah, that would be awesome. You know, it's always good to kind of go back to the roots and stuff. I had spent some time away from Jersey at some point in my life, and then when I got back to Jersey, I felt so much better. So it's exciting for you to go back up to Canada. Now, before we jump into anything flesh and blood related today, I kind of want to get a little bit of a feel for who you are, Tarek, and let the listeners get a feel for it as well. So I want to know first of all, what do you like to do when you aren't gaming or messing around with TCGs at all?
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, I wanted to touch on the fact that you're from Jersey because I spent a lot of time myself in Jersey, actually like 3, 4 years, and I think Jersey gets a bad rep. I remember when I first moved there, the Canadian or the American border guard, they do their standard question, and then he asked me, he's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Jersey." He's like, "To visit or live?" And I'm like, "To live there." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm sorry about that." So that was my first impression of Jersey. But I have to say, after living there, I fell in love with the Garden State. So, New York City is a stone throw away, and you got like awesome casinos and awesome entertainment, like within a half hour drive, really, any direction. So I love my time in Jersey. Um, to answer your other question, what do I like to do outside of gaming? I'm a huge golfer. So one of my passion, goals for the summer is actually to become a scratch golfer. I'm currently sitting at about a 7 or 8 handicap. So I've been making a push to try and improve and become a scratch golfer, kind of pushing myself too hard. Actually, just fractured a bone in my hand last week. It was starting to hurt, and I got an x ray right before I left the clinic. I'm like, I'll throw my own hand in the x-ray machine and see what's going on. And it turns out I have a small, hairline fracture in one of my bones. So I gotta rest that up. But I'm an avid golfer. I love hockey as well. I'll watch it nonstop. Thankful that the Tampa Bay Lightning got put in their place and didn't win a third cup. But big sports guy outside of my gaming. So yeah.
Well, what other sports outside of hockey and golf are you into? Are you a fan of? And we're going to get to. You are a Toronto fan, I'm
Mhm.
assuming.
Yeah.
Are you a Toronto fan through and through? Blue Jays as well.
Well, I mean, I cheer for the Toronto teams when they're playing. So when I say big sports guy, I mean like I'm all in on hockey and golf. It's just kind of like what my upbringing was. It was hockey in the winter and golf in the summer. I'm kind of like a fair weather or passive fan when it comes to the other sports. Like I'll watch football with my girlfriend if it's on. She's a huge Giants fan, so we'll watch the Giants every week. But by and large, I kind of follow it peripherally, more for social reasons. Same with baseball and basketball at the same time, but it don't it doesn't have the same appeal to me that the other two sports do. So I'm a peripheral fan. Like I'll go to Blue Jays games and Raptors games and I'll watch it if it's on TV, but I'm not like going out of my way to like learn the stats and follow the lore like I do in golf or hockey. So
Well, first of all, I do want to say I do appreciate your appreciation of the Garden State. I remember when you were on Flake's podcast, the Instant Speed podcast, around the time when the Pro Tour was announced in New Jersey. You said, pretty much what you said today, that hey, it's a great state, and I remember hearing that. I'm like, you know what, people were really trashing Jersey when it got announced, and I was like, oh man, they don't get it, and I was happy to have someone like you out there, throwing giving us some love, which is awesome. Where in Jersey were you spending time?
yeah, so I was up near like Summit and Morristown. So that's where I spent a lot of my time when I was there, and then Hackensack for a little bit. I played at the Bearded Dragon, which was up in Bernardsville. So kind of that area was my stomping ground. I made a lot of friends in the scene over there from Magic that I kind of miss to this day. So if I were to move back to any state in America, it'd actually be probably Jersey and then maybe California are on my like top two. So
I love to hear that. I love to hear that, Tariq. And you know what? I don't live too far from the Bearded Dragon, and I hope that they start getting some more Flesh and Blood stuff going on. I know Craig Krempels did learn to play there, and I'm hoping that we can hopefully get some more. Currently go up to Booton for at Highlander for most of my armories, but it'd be nice to get some at Bearded Dragon as well. Now, when did like TCGs start for you? I know you're an avid Magic player, or at least you were. I'm sure you still do. But was that the beginning, or was there other TCGs in the mix as well?
Yeah, so I started younger. I actually started with the Yu-Gi-Oh collectible card game, and it's funny. I was talking to my mom about this the other day because she came down to watch like my graduation and everything, and we all went out for my birthday dinner because I actually turned 31 a couple days ago. So we all went out for my birthday dinner, and some of my friends that play Flesh and Blood were along with us, and she kind of was like, I have no idea how you became such a nerd because your brother is in the Air Force and doesn't do anything, nerd related, and your father is like the exact same like carbon copy of your brother. So, and my mom herself, she's not into this kind of stuff or comics or anything. So, I was kind of a black sheep in the family where I kind of did my own thing. And I think it started, on the school ground, kids at school and or on the block, they had cards. So, one day I saw them playing, like, what's that? Oh, it's Yu-Gi-Oh, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, I have a booster pack. I'm playing locals. And there was like a regionals in Toronto, like in 2003 or four. So I must have been like 11 or 12 at the time. And I decided to go. It was like right before GOAT format, or maybe it was GOAT format, but nobody knew GOATs existed yet. And that was kind of my first foray into competitive TCGs. And, that first regional, seeing like 100 plus people all gathered to play the same game, I was kind of hooked. So it kind of just took off from there. I played competitive StarCraft for a while, which took up a lot of time. If you ever played that game, that is a game you have to grind endlessly just to get slightly better. So that was a major time sink, and actually one of the most fun games I've ever played. It's one of the richest games I've ever played, and I'm kind of sad that it died. But throughout college, yeah, it was very time intensive, so I needed to find another game that took up a little bit less time. That's actually about the time I got into Magic, around 2014 or so, right when Theros came out, or I guess that's 13. And yeah, and then I played Magic for a couple of years, went to med school, and then Flesh and Blood came out, and the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is interesting to me that you mentioned StarCraft because very much different than TCGs in general. But was that something that really gave you the competitive itch in your like more adult life? Now, I know you mentioned Yu-Gi-Oh in your younger life. Was StarCraft kind of something that maybe sparked something for Magic and then eventually Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that too. I think StarCraft 2 was what actually awoken my and I attributed a lot to StarCraft was is my work ethic. Because before StarCraft, I got into StarCraft for like first year university, so right after high school. And I was always a good student in the sense that I didn't have to study very hard to get good grades, but and at StarCraft 2, I was pretty good to start off with. Like I got placed like Diamond. This is right when Masters came out, and then I quickly became Masters and then Grandmasters. But when you hit the top of the top in StarCraft, you get placed against these players that just endlessly train like day in and day out. And at the time, the Koreans were the people to beat in the scene. And I was playing at the Korean server. So talking to some of them and kind of going through and learning or seeing firsthand what their work ethic was like really kind of broke this barrier in my head at the time where it was like, oh, it's not just good enough to be good at something that, you have to work endlessly. And, even for 99% of us, even if we do that endless amount of work, we're probably just still going to be above average and not exceptional at everything we do in our life. So, I attribute StarCraft into, a huge personal growth and milestone in my life where I realized that no matter what you wanted out of life, out of work, out of anything, you need to work your ass off to get it because nothing comes free. And here are the best of the best that were putting in like literally 16-hour days every day, getting carpal tunnel from a video game. And so it was a big turning point in my life, and it's a lesson I learned and I took through both academics and then other things I did. So
Now,
if that
now
answers it.
you did convert some of that, competitiveness and some success to Magic. Do you miss the competitive scene of Magic, or do you are you just totally happy with where Flesh and Blood is right now?
No, I miss it for sure. I mean, Magic's a very storied game with a very entrenched history, and one of the biggest regrets I have is when I got into Magic was right during my college grind years. There was the MCAT, there were the grades I needed to get, medical school. So I was never able to consistently play enough Magic where I would give myself the best chance at getting, phenomenal results. And I got pretty good results over the years, SCG Invitational top eights, Grand Prix top eights, blah, blah, blah. But I never had the time where I could dedicate to a grinding session. And the scene kind of died out with COVID, and now EDH is kind of taking its place. And it is kind of sad for me in a way because you know, chasing that elusive pro tour train, as they used to call it, or the ability to stay on the pro tour, was a goal for not only me but a lot of friends that I played with at the time. And one of my good friends actually ended up becoming gold, like right before they removed the the players club or the pro club. So I thought it was quite sad. I do still play the game because most of my friend group actually still play the game. I've converted some of them into playing Flesh and Blood, and as we speak, there's actually a I don't even know what they're called anymore, like the old PTQs, whatever the branding they're
Oh
using now.
yeah.
RCQs, I think they're called now. So I think there's one this weekend actually in Pioneer, and I've been playing actually a good amount of Magic over the last week in preparation for that. And I'm going to be sleeving up. Is it Phoenix? Actually tomorrow. So I'm actually looking forward to it. I've actually practiced a fair amount, and I actually really like my deck going into it. So I still play Magic. I do miss the old pro scene, but they're trying to bring it back to some degree. I have my reservations about it, but let's see how they do, and maybe it's good.
Yeah, I think personally, and I used to play a lot of Magic as well. And when I looked at what they announced most recently for their new kind of
Hmm.
organized play, it felt a little. It left a lot to be desired for me. Not that I'm really playing Magic anymore. I'm all in on Flesh and Blood, but I do miss the golden
Hmm.
years of Magic as well, just like you. And some of this structure feels like you gotta qualify to have a chance to qualify, which is like always like weird to me. I remember when it was just PTQs and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and that was just a lot of fun. And that's kind of what's awesome about Flesh and Blood is like these pro quests are cool,
Yeah.
and obviously there's more work to be done there, but
Yeah, my
we.
buddy Matt Dukes likes to say it's like inserting yourself in a flow chart. You just got to figure out where in that flow chart you're at, and it doesn't actually lead to anywhere.
Hmm.
So I get
Yeah.
that.
Um, Now you had lived in New Jersey, and then you got to come to the Pro Tour in New Jersey. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience at the first Flesh and Blood Pro Tour?
Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun. So we were lucky enough to get hooked up by Team Dragon Shield or Dragon Shield with a living space, 5 minutes from the venue. So we flew in the Monday before the event, met up with our other teammates, Matt Rogers, Nick Butcher, and then Rob Seigel. And my girlfriend came out as well, and she was kind of like the cook and the maid. Really took care of us like a mother. So it was a great week, just hanging out. Originally, I was on chain up till like the day before a reg, or I guess Wednesday. And I got a lot of flack from people for switching off on it. But in our testing, I stopped being able to beat Starvo anymore as the chain player. Yeah, we had a really good list that was tuned into chain, had a really good mirror match plan, and had a good prism plan actually. Even though I ended up losing to Prism, I think our overall record was positive to Prism. Over the course of the weekend, I don't think I dropped a game against it in the calling that I played. So the weekend was pretty good. We learned a ton in testing. Leading up to the Pro Tour. Unfortunately, didn't do so well. I took some quick losses. I think I started 3-0 and then I lost like 2 in a row or something. I ended up making the cut, but the way it was kind of situated, it just wasn't possible to get a desired result. Like even if I went undefeated, I think I was dead for top 8. And then like had I lost any round except exactly the last round, I think I was dead for top 16 as well. So just running the numbers, it made more sense to kind of sign up for the calling, and did the calling and did pretty well. I think I lost my win into top 8, but I mean that's the way she goes. So I had a ton of fun though. Getting to see everybody from all the countries was absolutely fantastic. Everybody from Europe that I've kind of talked to over the years, I guess, in Magic that I've known, I finally got to meet for the first time. Matthew Folks is one of them. Had a great time overall. Listening to James speak or just kind of seeing him speak was amazing. I didn't actually get to talk to him, which was on my bucket list. I kept kind of putting it off, and I never got the chance over the weekend. But there's always Pro Tour France, so that's definitely on my to-do list is meet James White if he's going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'd be remiss not to bring up the knick-knack bric-a-brac list that you were bringing there. You got a lot of people excited with that knick-knack bric-a-brac, my friend. I remember when I think you posted the deck list. I was like, what do we do? This card? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about it now?
Well, so the first tweet I will say was a bit of a hype tweet. It was trying to get people to read the article. And I think a lot of people in general kind of missed the point of, knick-knack bric-a-brac and what it was. Because if you actually sit down and read the article, it was actually a card that I actually used to explain a concept of what I termed damage stacking. And I actually say verbatim, like in the article, that this is a hedge. Like, do you think Starvo is going to be fatiguing you or racing you at this juncture? And, it was my belief that Starvo had a difficult time out racing Chain, which we ended up seeing at the Pro Tour, right? We saw, Mr. Pintor, Pablo Pintor, win the whole thing because he was consistently out racing Starvos. And the issue that Chain was having was, what happens if they started fatiguing you? And, it got to a point where, a lot of good Chain players were off the deck because they could no longer beat Starvo fatigue. Alex Keeler, somebody who plays a lot of Chain, was off it because he couldn't beat fatigue at one point. And it's a true story. He asked me, he's like, can you beat a Starvo fatigue? And it was, I played him with my knick-knack bric-a-brac list, and I actually showed him, like, if you wanted to beat a Starvo fatigue, this is how you do it 99% of the time. Because being able to play 4, 5, 6 time snap potions really kind of, push the matchup in favor of Chain. And in actuality, it could crush Oldhim too. So if you were to play a format with Chain and a lot of Oldhim and maybe fatigue Starvo, this was the way to go. Now, when that list came out was like 2 or 3 weeks before the Pro Tour. Because remember, I write the articles, give them to to Channel Fireball, and then they get edited and then posted. So, that list was, one of my first lists going into the Pro Tour, and it was at a time where in my metagame and the people I tested with, Starvos were predominantly fatiguing chain. So I gave that list as like, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's my hedge, because these cards, Knick-Knack Brick-a-Brack, used to be unmovable, because unmovable was a hedge for the race. Knick-Knack Brick-a-Brack was the hedge for a fatigue plan. So, and in my article, I actually say that you can swap them out depending on if you think it's going to be a racing metagame. Like, you can play unmovable. If you think they're going to be predominantly fatiguing you, you can play Knick-Knack Brick-a-Brack. But the large point was to kind of illustrate that you need to be playing Time Snap potions against Starvo, because at worst they're generic blue. At best case, they save your ass if you're getting fatigued. And that was the main crux concept. And I was just kind of using Knick-Knack Brick-a-Brack as an example of that, and people kind of took that and kind of ran with it. But I don't mind the memeing. I mean, I think it's all in good fun. Well, at least I hope so. But, if people want to give me crap for it, they can. But I think it was a valuable concept, and it's a lesson worth kind of revisiting for future formats, because it's going to happen again.
The memeing is all definitely in good fun. The card is a wild card, and I'm glad that Flesh and Blood prints cards like that. And when you're preparing for a Pro Tour or a huge tournament like this, you have to kind of scrape around and find those little hedges, as you mentioned. So, it was fun to see the not pandemonium or anything like that, but like the everybody talking about Knick-Knack Brick-a-Brack, and then when I know you eventually switch decks, which is fine. And one of the things was, some people were like, well, I sleeved up that deck. I'm like, to me anyway, is if you're playing in a pro level event, you should probably do your research first, regardless. Even if someone as good of a player as you, Tariq, says that something's good, I think everybody should at least verify it, not just sleeve it up. So that is that was fun, because I think that card will be
Infamous.
Infamous. They'll relate it to you for
Yeah.
sure for many years to come. But that's okay. It's a fun card. Now you are headed back up to Canada, and as many people know, you were the first U.S. national champion of Flesh and Blood down in Orlando, which was awesome. It was kind of really incredible to see your rise, right? We know that you hadn't played in Vegas, but then kind of picked up the game around that time and really took to it. And obviously you were quite a natural and put some serious work into learning the game and playing it. And then, hey, you win U.S. Nationals. Now you're going to be up in Canada. Are we going to see the first dual national champ with you? Canadian and you're going to have the whole North America. Once we get Mexico going, you're going to have to move down there.
Yeah, it's actually funny. So I have to actually talk to LSS and see what the rules are for me switching, because apparently you're only allowed to play the nationals that is under your gem ID. And this year I've spent more time in the US, so we'll see which nationals I have to play, or do I even want to play the US one, or do I want to play the Canadian one? Because I think the Canadian one just got announced actually yesterday. So funny enough, it's going to be in Ottawa. So either way, I'm going to have to probably travel for it. And I don't believe we know where U.S. Nationals is going to be this year. So, but that would be pretty sweet to be like a multinational champion. But there's some really good players in Canada. Like, the skill density in Toronto alone is absolutely mind blowing. Like, a lot of people you've never heard of, and then you got Pro Tour top 8 competitor, Isaac Crute. Just that whole group is absolutely phenomenal. You got Dante around the area too, and then I'm going to be up there as well. So just the density of talent in the Greater Toronto area kind of makes me a little wary to play Canadian Nationals, because even though it's going to be a smaller event, I'm literally going to be playing superstars that most people have never heard of every single round. So I don't know if it can be done, but I'll give it my best either way. And either Nationals I play, I'm going to have fun. So that's the name of the game.
Well, I'm pulling for you for Canada because, I think it'd just be cool. It'd be such a cool story. Hey, you won US and then you won Canada, and then what's next? Um, Now, what are your competitive plans for the rest of the summer? You mentioned Pro Tour France. Anything else going
Yeah.
on until then?
So I have the big move I was telling you about, moving up to Canada. So that's going to take up, the next 2 weeks or so. After I get settled in Canada, yeah, we're going to be focused on France. Being in the US, I actually haven't touched Uprising at all. Today is actually the release date. And after we're done here, I'm actually planning on getting out of here and playing a draft tonight. So today will be like my second ever draft of or I guess third ever draft of Uprising. So I definitely feel a little bit behind the eight ball because I see people from abroad posting their decks, posting their drafts. I've seen spreadsheets already, people talking draft theory, and it's like I barely cracked like 3 packs. So as somebody who lives in the US, I'm way behind the eight ball right now. Um, in terms of classic constructed, I have some general ideas on what's good, what's not. But I really haven't got a ton of time to test yet. Life's just been super busy for me. Not having access to the cards is another kind of uh, thorn in the side. So I'm hoping once the next week is up, I'll have a good month and a half to just kind of focus on Flesh and Blood and get up to Lille and do some drafting with my teammates. But we'll go from there.
Yeah. Now, how would you, since this is split format, Pro
Mhm.
Tour Lille, how do you split testing between formats going into a tournament like this?
Yeah, so it's a lot like nationals. So I try and get a good idea of the limited format ahead of time. I try and crush out as many drafts as possible so that the draft portion of it becomes kind of autopilot. And it's a little bit different than in Magic, right? In Magic, the sets were kind of released 2 weeks in advance, so you really didn't get much time to focus on either format because we have about a month and a half of lag time in Flesh and Blood. It allows me to kind of just figure out both formats simultaneously because you have enough time to kind of do it. So I'll probably be drafting as much as possible with friends around me for the first couple weeks. Once I have a good handle on the draft format, I'll probably put it to the side, focus on classic constructed, and then once we get together in Lille with my team, we'll be doing team drafts and finalizing our pick orders and stuff like that. So I kind of like to go back and forth. So I'll focus on limited. Once I get a good conceptual idea of where I'm going, I'll then really dig into constructed. Hope to have my constructed deck locked in or be between one or two decks before Lil. And then once I get to Lil, we'll pick our final deck and then just kind of iron out any kinks in the draft format.
And now that's pretty exciting. The one complaint that a lot of people have had, and myself included, for Jersey was that it wasn't split format. And I understand the Uprising wasn't out, and Everfest
Mhm.
wasn't a draftable set, but it is very exciting, kind of going into Pro Tour Lille to have the split format, or at least I think we assume it's split format. I don't know if anything official has been out for it, but
I think they
um,
said it, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Which is exciting. I think to really test the best players, they have to be good at everything. I think, and
Mhm.
it should be very exciting. Now, the next is a segment that I do on the show called the Fresh Faves. Basically, I ask you some of your favorites in the game,
Mhm.
and yeah, are you ready for it?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So the first one: who is your favorite hero in the game?
Data doll for Blitz. She is
Ooh.
so much fun. Um, just the things she can do is absolutely amazing, and she's like one good payoff away from being absolutely busted. So Data doll and Blitz. Classic constructed. Probably Lexi or Azalea. I really like Ranger. They're always like one or two cards or matchups away from being, truly broken. But I love Death Dealer, Lexi builds specifically, and the things you can do with Snapshot. I love
Okay.
drawing cards, so drawing like 6 cards a turn is right up my alley.
Yeah, I mean, Lexi's got a little support out of Uprising, so we'll see where she lands too, which is kind of exciting. Now, what is your favorite weapon?
Favorite weapon? Probably Death Dealer. It draws cards, so I mean, Death Dealer easily is my favorite weapon. My second probably has to be Probably Luminaris, just because of how unique it is. I was playing around with a combo a while back where you play cash out to turn a bunch of your auras, because Luminaris makes your auras weapons. You can then cash them out for silver tokens and then cash them in to draw cards. So that was a fun little thing I was toying with.
That's
So
pretty cool.
it has to be either Jet Dealer or Luminaris.
What is your favorite equipment?
Favorite equipment. I have a love-hate relationship with Crown of Seas. I love it when I'm the one playing with it, and I hate when I'm playing against it.
Feel that. Oh my god, yeah.
Outside of that, probably Grasp of the Arcanite, just because it was the card that ended up winning me nationals. I think I killed like all of my top 8 opponents in the quarter, semis, and then finals with the same play pattern of go to 1 life, turn off the Arcanite Skullcap, make a rune chant, and then kill them with it. So probably Grasp has to be had the most sentimental value.
And your favorite non-hero, non-weapon, non-equipment card? Your run-of-the-mill cards, attack, actions, or instants.
Ravenous Rabble. I just love that card so much. Just a clean, especially in the Lightning Briar deck, just a clean 0 for 4 with Go Again was like the greatest thing ever. Or Plunder Run. They should unban that card. That card died for Briar Sins. I think that card was completely fine. I love playing Blitz in Vegas because you actually got to see that card flourish again. In all honesty, it was completely balanced card in Blitz, right? A lot of decks didn't even play it. I don't think its power level is too egregious for Classic Constructed, especially when you got cards like Channel Lake Frigid and Crown of Seeds floating around. I think there's or even Aether Wildfire out of Kano. There's like way more egregious cards than Plunder Run, and I think LSS should stop being cowards and unban it.
I mean, it just sounds like you just want to draw more cards. I mean,
Oh yeah, 100%. I was a blue mage at Heart of Magic. I want to draw all the cards. So
I love it. I love it. Now we're gonna get to some listener questions here. The listener questions come from the Buds Discord, which is available to everybody. It's in the link tree in the show notes. If anybody wants to join, it's a good time in there, and it's a lot of fun. Actually, the first question actually comes from Jordan from the Flesh and Pod podcast, who they are running a fantasy draft of the Pro Tour in France, which I will be one of the people doing the fantasy draft. Now, I do have to ask you a question. When do you think you should be picked in the fantasy draft for Pro Tour France, Tariq?
I mean, pack one, pick one, obviously. I mean, I play to win, so it's hard, especially in card games, because nobody can control their outcomes. But I really like the way I've been playing over the last couple of months, even though I didn't get the results I wanted at the Pro Tour. I just ended up taking, I think, my variance in a bad spot, and it is what it is. We're playing against the best of the best in the world, but I thought our group had probably the best deck in the room. Was ready for all the matchups, was the most fine tuned. Chris Ray ended up on our list as well. He was 8-0 after day one. And that's just what happens, right? Chris is the perfect example just of a bad run of variance. Or it's gonna strike. He went undefeated day one and then lost a bunch in a row just to miss top 8. So it happens to everyone. Everybody's susceptible to it. But I really like our process. I really like our group. If it's not going to be me, then it definitely should be Matt Rogers or Nick Butcher from our team, because I love our testing process, and I think we're going to have a very solid understanding of both limited and classic constructed going forward. Actually, as a funny tangent from this, I attribute a lot of my national success because I went X and 1 in the drafting portion. And I think I was like XO in the weeks prior at the callings, the limited crawlings. But Matt actually stayed with me at nationals, and one of the things we did before the event was kind of just sit and watch the recorded drafts of the ones that happened in Dallas and in Cincinnati. And so just us going through the pick order really made a huge difference. And we really learned things about the format that I don't think other people had figured out by the time nationals rolled around. So To answer your question, where you should pick me, probably pack one, pick one, or pretty close to the top.
All right, it sounds good. I mean, I hope to get first pick, and then I'll think about it. Maybe I'll give you the first pick. But the EV's there. The EV's there. I think it's probably pretty good. So
I mean, that sounds cocky as hell. I have to be confident in myself, though. So I'm not going to do it. Who is, right?
Yeah, no. I appreciate it. Now, Jordan does ask. With the Fab Fitness Challenge that Arsenal Pass is running right now, going on in July, what are some common pitfalls that you see when your patients try to start living a healthy lifestyle for the first time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually, I'm going to be participating in that as well. I think that's a fantastic thing Brendan and Arsenal Pass are doing. And, uh, it's great to incentivize people to get off their butt and start moving. And I need to do more of that myself. So kudos to them. And it's an interesting question because the human body is not meant to lose weight, right? We are built still biologically as if we were, it was 20,000 years ago and we were living in the wild and food is not readily available to us. So our body's number one goal is to hold on to energy, hold on to fat as long as possible. And we are the only species on the planet that has to actively burn calories in order to survive. Every other animal out there is constantly hunting, constantly foraging, just to kind of make ends meet. So just know that for anybody listening, it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do because you are not built to lose the weight. And you're going to have to fight every hormone in your body that's telling you to eat, every psychological trick your brain will play in order to eat. So just kind of keep at it and don't make any drastic changes overnight. Small steps that are sustainable, because the worst thing you can do is do something dramatic, shock your body. It may work for the first couple of weeks, but the biggest thing is habit formation, because if you don't form good habits, then you're going to go right back to whatever your old habits were. The weight's going to come right back. So more than losing weight, I think the important thing for people doing this challenge is form good habits during this time period. And a month is enough time to break old habits and start new ones. So even if you don't work out in the gym, I like to tell patients, make it a priority if at 6 p.m. every day you drive to the gym. Even if you step foot, lift one weight and go home, your brain is now still associating at 6 p.m. It's time to be active. And that's the way to start. Don't kind of go on keto. Don't do the fad diets. They've been shown to, they don't really work, if you don't stick with it. So do small sustainable changes rather than big oversweeping gestures is kind of my advice.
Yeah, you want to make it you just want to change your whole lifestyle as it is to something that is that makes sense, because it's and I think the one thing I've been telling people is don't expect results right away, because that can be just one of the toughest things. And when you're working really hard and you don't get the results that you need, but they will come if you stick with it. And it's not gonna. Rome wasn't built in a day, is what I like to say. But next, we do have a question from Greg, aka Darth Prentice, asking, do you have a favorite dragon in UPR?
Yeah, so my top 3 dragons. So my favorite one is probably Kyloria. Kyloria? Am I saying that right? The one that draws a card.
Oh, really? The one that draws a card is your favorite Tark?
Yeah. Can you imagine? So, obviously I have to do Chrome. So Kyloria is my number 1, and then Chrome is
Chrome,
my second favorite. Only because it gives you an action point, which you can then use for a Tome of Findel and draw more cards. So those have to be my top 2 dragons, both because they facilitate the drawing of cards. And I'm excited for both of them. Yeah,
that's a great answer. Now, Canadian Flake asks, what will happen first? The Leafs advance to the second round, or Flake beats Tark at a hairy Tarantula Armory final?
Oh, that's an easy one. Flake beating me at an armory. I was going to be cocky for a second and say Flake can never beat me, but he's pretty good. And the Leafs are honestly cursed. I don't know if you've heard. the Leaf curse or the lore behind why the Leafs can't win a Stanley Cup, or like if you heard of the Tragically Hip and you've heard the song, then you might know. But you know, I've lost all hope at this point. It's been demoralizing. I mean, granted, they ended up losing to the Stanley Cup champ or semifinalists this year or finalists, but still, I don't know. I think Flake will beat me way before the Leafs advance to the second round.
Yeah, well, I'm right there with you. I'm a Flyers fan, and it's just been a brutal couple years, but maybe one day they'll figure it out. But Dr. Unks, aka Drunks, asks who would win in a fight, a large bull moose or a hungry polar bear?
The heck, this is not even close. Like, if you've seen what a bull moose looks like, or just a moose in real life, so I have on like trips that I've taken up north into northern Canada and so forth. I don't even know if they're bull moose, but whatever moose they are massive. And if I'm not, mistaken, they're like 1,000 plus pounds, like literally huge ass moose. And a polar bear is like what, like 800 pounds, maybe, on the larger end. They're probably closer to like 600, which is still large. Don't get me wrong, but a large bull moose, if pissed off, like would absolutely destroy a polar bear. And this is like not even remotely close. And I've seen, I think, both of them in real life. So, I'm talking from personal experience. Seeing a moose cross the road, it's like, holy shit! Like,
Oh
you don't
yeah.
want to mess one of those things.
I mean, I go up to Vermont quite a bit, and that's like my number one fear is just one jumping out in front of my car. I mean, they're so big.
Yeah.
Sigma Ordos asks, how is the competitive process of testing and deck building compared to Magic the Gathering? How does it feel to have to manage and balance resources compared to, land count and mana screw and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a really underexplored area of this game, actually, is that when I look at deck lists, the first thing that kind of strikes me is that the blue to red ratios are kind of just random, right? People are playing cards because they like cards, and they're not figuring out proper ratios. So when I see a deck list with good ratios versus a deck list with bad ratios, it really makes, a huge difference in my mind. And this was especially true when I was looking at chain decks last format. One of the reasons I like Belittle Minnowism was it worked with that ratio a little bit. So I think it's similar. Like in Magic, the game was a lot more established. So there was a lot of already theory, thanks to Frank Karsten, on how many lands you should play for how many cards, how many colors you need to hit on what turn. And in this game, we just don't have that yet. And I'm not a statistician by any measure, but I've done some, preliminary stuff myself where I try and work out what's my average cost of my deck and how much mana or resources per turn on average is my hand demanding. And then from there, I try and make my average pitch cost kind of be a little bit higher than that. And that's kind of my, intuitive way of kind of going about that. But we don't have the person that has kind of written the book on this topic yet, and I am not math savvy enough to be that person. So it is an area for theoretical growth in this game that I'm also looking forward to seeing, because who knows, in a couple of years, our blue counts may be drastically different than they are today.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know, like, even in Magic, like when I first started playing, it was like always 24 lands, 24 lands, and then I think by the time I stopped playing Magic, people were playing like close to 30, almost, which is like crazy. Things evolve, and that'll be interesting to see. Next, Jeremy asks, top 3 generic commons that aren't pummel, push the point, or sink below.
Is Punter Run on the list? Because that one's banned.
Well, that's a rare, so it wouldn't be common.
Oh, commons. Okay. I'm not sure. Okay, let me pull up a database here so I don't start listing off rares, because they kind of blend together in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So is Ravenous Rabble a common? I'm pretty sure it is, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
So Ravenous Rabble, number 1. Is Snatch a common?
No, that is a rare.
No, that's a rare. Ooh. Lightning Presses, I know, is a rare.
Razor Reflex is a common. I know that.
Okay, Razor Reflex. There you go. The new 0 for 4 in this set's going to be really good. The one, if you've played a red, it gets go again. The Draconic one.
Oh yeah, common, right? I guess that's kind of a generic too, right? I get
I
Kind
think
of.
it's not a true generic, but yeah.
What
Um,
is the one they reprinted in Uprising? The one that if you have less life as go again, 0 for 4.
oh, Scar for Scar.
Scar for Scar. How do you feel
That's
about
a
that?
fantastic. That's a fantastic card.
Yeah.
I mean, old go again. So the rate limiting step in Flesh and Blood is action points. So anything with go again is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think if I missed any other generics. It's hard when I'm put on the spot like this. I'd say Ravenous Rabble, Scar for Scar are probably the top two, and then I don't know if Fate for Scene's a common, but it goes in that
Yeah.
0 for 4 block.
Fate
Fate for Scene's fantastic card, so probably one of those three.
Yeah, right. Now, Capolo, aka Andrea Biaggi, asks, which card is better, Erase Face or Command and Conquer?
I mean, they're they're just significantly different cards. Right, that's like asking what was better, Sleep Dart or Command and Conquer back in like Lexi, and I would tell you they're for different matchups. I think Command and Conquer has evolved since I started playing the game. When I first started playing, it was a rule that like you had to play 3 Command and Conquer in every deck you played, no matter what. And I think we've seen that change over time as decks have become more aggressive. The late game actually favors not arsenaling. You got Crown of Seeds that allows you to pick up the arsenal. So I think it's lost a little bit of its stock, and it's not the card that it used to be. Erase Face is still a bit of an unknown card, right? Sleep Dart was a fantastic silver bullet for Lexi and Ranger players, Azalea players against specific matchups, but it was never applicable to every matchup. So it's nice to see that they kind of gave every class a generic Sleep Dart. I'd say I'd still give the edge to Command and Conquer because it has a little bit more application in a nutshell. Like you could play that card blind and be perfectly okay. Where Erase Face, there's sometimes you can't just put it in your main deck because it'll be dead in a lot of matchups. So I think Command and Conquer gets the nod there.
Yeah. Unless you're playing Brute, you can just play both and be pretty happy. So that was the listener questions. Then again, to say again, you guys can always hop onto the Discord, the Buds, and check it out. Let's talk a little bit about some early Uprising impressions. I know neither of us had much time with the set so far. A couple drafts here and there. And that's it so far, but we've looked at the set, and I'm sure we're starting to theorize. So I want to know, for Constructed, right now, how do you think the format will shake out?
Yeah, so I've put a lot of thought into this already. It's mostly theory, and I've played a couple games, but we'll see how it shakes out. I think you have the Rune Blades, in Briar and Viscerai as one category. You got Oldhim and Old Bravo as the Guardian category, and then you got the Illusionist class in Prism, and maybe Dromai as the third. And we got the three new kind of heroes that will shake up the metagame in Icelander, Phi, and Dromai. So the way, if you pretend those heroes, the new heroes don't exist, and we look at, for example, the Ohio metagame that we saw for the last weekend, we saw a very classic, Guardian, Runeblade, Illusionist, or Prism metagame that you would typically see, and then plus minus some Lexi and Kano and the other decks kind of sprinkled in between. So I think the question is, we know this is the established metagame. There's going to be Olden players, there's going to be Prism players, and there's going to be Runeblade players. And you're still going to have your Kano and your Lexi players in there. And where did the three new heroes kind of fit in, right? So the question everybody kind of needs to answer is, can Dromai, which is an illusionist class, typically good against Guardians, can it go toe-to-toe with Runeblade? If the answer is yes, we're going to see, perhaps a very good Dromai metagame. Faye is very, reminiscent of what Lightning Briar was. So right off the bat, you can say it probably has the same strengths and weaknesses. It's probably fantastic into Prism, can probably flip a coin versus a Runeblade. It looks to be just as fast on paper, but it's definitely going to struggle against Oldhim, right? For all the same reasons that Lightning Briar did. And then can it even beat Icelander, right? The mumblings I've heard, now this is hearsay, so don't, burn me at the stake if I'm wrong. But from what I've heard, Icelander is favored in draft against 5 because of the Frostbite tokens and the disruption and so forth. So if that holds true, Icelander becomes a deck. Fi might have two really bad matchups in Oldhim and Icelander. Um, and then we have Icelander, right? Obviously, Kano came out of nowhere at the Pro Tour in the hands of Arsenal Pass. Can she do the same thing? Can she still output the same amount of explosive damage while also being disruptive? So, questions that need to be answered. If you gun to my head, what would I expect the metagame to be tomorrow? I think Fi would probably be the most playable deck. Dromai has the biggest question mark on it, and then we're going to see kind of the Ohio metagame shakeout. You're going to see some Briar, some Prism, and some Oldhim as well mixed in there.
Now, decks like Oldhim and Lexi did get some tools and some in just straight up ice cards out of the Icelander pool. Do you think that pushes them a little bit closer to some real strength?
Yeah, I mean Oldhim's has been good already. Like it's probably the best deck if you don't play against Prism. Like if you could tell me that I would never play a Prism in a tournament, I would register Oldhim 10 out of 10 times. It has a miserable Prism matchup, and that's the deck that kind of keeps it in track. And in theory, it should also have a bad Dromai matchup. So Oldhim, I think its power increase is kind of redundant. Like it got a now unconditional blizzard in the I'm gonna get the name wrong. The whatever the hex is that everything loses go again. So
Hypothermia,
I mean,
I think. Yeah.
exactly, hypothermia. So it just does what it does a little bit better. But it was already fantastic against those matchups. Like there's the discussion I was having with Matt the other day. It was like, if we end up on Oldhim, do we even play that card in the deck? And if that's the case, did Oldhim actually get anything that it actually wanted in this new set? And we both kind of thought, well, no, it probably didn't get close to anything in the new set. Lexi is always, like I said, has always been one of my favorite heroes. So the moment I think Lexi is really good, I'm probably going to jump ship and start playing her. But the biggest problem I've always had with Lexi is, how do you beat Guardian, right? And, she's good against other aggro decks. Like, don't get me wrong, somewhere in the realm of maybe she's 55 to 60% against other Runeblade decks. But she loses extra hard against Guardian, where Runeblades actually do have a way to kind of navigate the Guardian matchups in certain ways. So the biggest problem for me was, and Prism as well. And the biggest problem for me with Lexi is you have to choose. Do you want to build like a more aggressive Lightning build that makes you better against Guardian and Prism, or do you want to play a more disruptive build with Ice that gives you percentage points against Runeblade? And it really forces you to make a tournament breaking decision before the tournament even starts. So I'm not the type of person that likes to polarize my tournaments before they start. I kind of like to leave myself open. So I'll test the new cards out, but my intuition is that, the ice cards that Lexi will get don't fix her problems that she had previously against Guardian. It only makes her Runeblade matchups maybe slightly better.
Now, here's a question. We've talked a lot about different heroes and different classes that you think will be good. One class in particular hasn't been mentioned, Brute. What do you think about Rhinar or, of course, Levia into the new meta?
So leading up to Vegas, because it was a team format, we needed to find other decks. I actually played a lot of Levia. Is it Levia or Levia? I don't know.
Levia, but people call it Levia.
Levia. So I played actually some Levia because for a while we thought Rhinar was like the top deck of the format. And we thought, wow, if this is good, Levia has a lot of the same cards. Can we build a decent Levia deck that kind of looks like a Rhinar deck? And we quickly gave up on that. So, I mean, it's hard, right? Levia has a fundamental problem that the minute she stops blocking, she starts dying to her blood debt. So I remember I was actually testing Levia when I first started the game. It could not beat other aggro decks, being it Lexi or Aggro Dash or any of the Rune Blades, because what would happen is you would play the game as you were supposed to, start trading damage, and once you hit that like below 20 life threshold where Runeblade players can start putting out close to 16, 17 points of damage, you were forced to block. As you were forced to block, you start taking blood debt damage, and it kind of snowballs from there. And then you're in the, you've played Magic, so I like to say you're in the abyss where you're in this holding pattern of you need to block, taking blood debt, and then you're at lower life, which then facilitates more blocking until the game eventually runs out. So I don't know. I think Levia needs some new cards before I really look at her as a potential serious, tournament contender. I might take her to an armory, but there's some fundamental flaws with her that I think are going to preclude me from playing her.
You don't think a race face and the new crown is enough to do it?
I don't think so. No.
All right. Well, that is disappointing, but let's move on over to limited. Uh, it seems that no matter who you talk to, everyone has an opinion on which hero is best in draft, and that will always be true, and that will kind of always be something that we see, especially when a format is new. Do you have any initial thoughts? I did see on Twitter that you did have a pretty killer Dromai draft earlier this week.
Yeah. So I mean, I've played two drafts. I played one with Michael Fang because they ended up winning a box over in Vegas, and I drafted an Icelander deck, and I went 0-3. And I actually thought my deck was pretty good because I had a bunch of blue ice cards that cost 0 and 1, but I don't know. I got absolutely dummied, and then I played a recent draft with some locals here. That we kind of saved our pre-release packs, and then we kind of just built a draft deck from that. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm very much a person that I like to play and do stuff empirically before I start giving an answer. So I don't know. And I'm not going to give an opinion because I don't want to skew anybody too much.
Mm-hmm.
That deck I ended up drafting was a lot of fun. I had like 6 Transmorify or something,
Yeah,
and it was actually really really strong deck. So yeah, well, I'm gonna draft it more, and ask me again in a week, and I might have a more informed opinion.
Now a question, not really a question, but something that I found with Icelander as well. You said you felt like you had a really good deck with Icelander. I feel like Icelander is going to be the toughest puzzle, right, in this format, because it feels like like if you have a ton of like blue 1 and 0 costs, you're really doing it. But I also find that sometimes just having really tall red spells is enough to get you through to the end zone.
Yeah, are you talking about Icelander and Limited
Yeah,
specifically?
Icelander. Yeah. Oh.
It's like I said, I have very little experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me though how it's laid out, because my biggest worry with Icelander, especially later, if she does become one of the top heroes, if a bunch of people are going to be fighting for one class card, what does an Icelander deck look like without a bunch of good blue ice cards?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've answered that. And it may have to be a Gotal generic deck with a couple of arcane damage, burn spells kind of sprinkled in there. But I'm gonna leave that on the back burner for now because I have very little limited experience at the time of this recording. So I'm not gonna theorize. I'm very much I'll do it and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. This is all some theories, but what we saw with Tales of Aria was somewhat of a shift throughout its little bit of a life cycle, right? I think a lot of people were very high on Briar in the initial like couple months or a couple weeks of drafting Tales. And then, we saw some success with Oldham, and people started, drafting really great Oldham decks, and then and then there was always the random Lexi deck that seemed to kind of spike those drafts. Do you think that Uprising will kind of have a similar, if you had to guess, would Uprising have that kind of similar back and forth from heroes as we kind of explore the format?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Well, that's one of the things I love about draft is that it's a self-correcting format. Even if there's a hero that's slightly weaker than the others, just by the fact that it's weaker means it might get drafted less, which means it'll be better because it'll be more open. So you constantly have this back and forth. And some of the calling, some of my best decks were actually Lexi decks because nobody wanted to touch them, and I got like the most broken Lexi decks. I think of a feature match I was attacking for like 14 on turn 2 or something, just like absolutely insane. So. But from my limited experience, I think all 3 heroes are very balanced in a draft format. I would be surprised to see if one kind of goes above the other. But if we do, I would see, it would be a self correction. So if Icelander is the best hero to draft right now, maybe 5 falls off, and as 5 picks back up, we may say Draw might go back up, or some kind of back and forth like that. So it'll be interesting. I think we will see a cycle in the draft metagame. It's been true. It's a tale as old as time. I will say though, in the seal format, and I think other people have echoed this concern, is that Phi tends to be like Briar was last format, where the commons of the aggro decks tend to be of a little bit higher premium than their counterparts in the other heroes. So I think Phi is just a touch above the other two when it comes to sealed, unless you open the right cards in the other classes. But in draft, I think it's very well balanced.
Yeah, and I hope that is correct, because draft's the best way to play the game, and I think having a balanced format for the next couple months would be nice. Hey, here is actually a question about draftable formats in general, draftable sets. Having Everfest come out, not be draftable, supplemental set. Should we hope that LSS in the future moves a little bit less away from those supplemental sets and more into just draftable booster sets?
Yes, I've been very vocal about that locally, and I'm probably going to write an article about the things I would maybe change or would like to see, I guess, made different out of Flesh and Blood. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not James White. I'm not LSS, and I'm very much a player, and I believe for the most part that players should be players and developers be developers. But I think there was too much of a lull between Tales of Aria and Uprising. And I think, again, just having Uprise as the only draftable set for an entire year is too long. I think in a perfect world, like if I had the keys to the castle, I would make it so that there were 4 sets released a year. I think once every 3 months is an appropriate rate. It's not too fast. Where like in Magic the Gathering right now, I feel like you're at the end of one spoiler season, and the next thing you know, you blink and you're in the beginning of another, which is just like you're kind of getting burnt out. So I think every 3 months is a good kind of cycle. And the way I would do it is I would make my supplemental set at Christmas time. There's always a natural lull around the holidays. People like to go home, and it's the perfect time to release a set where you only just need to buy the cards. You don't need to get people together to draft. And it goes into the new year, and it kind of freshens up your classic constructed format. So if it was up to me, the supplemental set would be, November, December, and then April there would be a set, June there would be a set, September there'd be a set, and then so forth.
Do you think that they could do a draftable supplemental set? I mean, obviously with something like Everfest you couldn't, right? The classes were all over the place, but do you think maybe if we looked at it from like a talent only perspective for a supplemental set, do you think we can make it draftable?
That's a lot of theory. I don't think I'm well qualified to answer that, because I think the point of supplemental sets is that they want to boost every hero or every class, I guess, and that would just be a nightmare to try and balance it in drafting sets. So it's hard to say. I'll leave that. That's a James White question. If you get James White back in your crosshairs, you can ask him that.
Yeah, well, one day I'll get him. Well, I want to thank you, Tariq, for coming on. I really appreciate it, and you've been an absolute pleasure to talk to. I want you to plug anything you want to plug. I know you do some content. You write some great articles. Plug whatever you need to plug.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for having me on, first of all. I really enjoyed our conversation. For those of you listening, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Tariq Patel 10 on Twitter. I also do articles over on channelfireball.com. My life's kind of hectic right now. I do have a couple articles coming out in the next couple weeks, and I hope to write a little bit more regularly as my schedule calms down. So you can catch me on Twitter or catch me on channelfireball.com.
Awesome. And you guys can all catch me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. You can join the Discord. Check out the Patreon, doing some stuff over there. Helps keep the mics hot and the lights on. And subscribe to the YouTube, rate all the podcasts on all the audio stuff. And yeah. Now, Tariq, I always like to end the episode talking a little bit about food. I think it's the great unifier. You used to live in New Jersey. Is there any food in New Jersey that you miss in particular?
The pizza. I am a pizza connoisseur, like to the point where I'd put Dave Portnoy to shame. I think I've eaten just as much, if not more, pizza than that guy. So I tricked myself when I first moved down to Florida. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like New York / New Jersey pizza. It's pretty similar. And then I went back up to visit. I'm like, oh, this is not even remotely close. So it's the pizza for sure.
Do you have a favorite pizza joint from when you were up there?
Trying to think. There was this one spot. So I like Napoli style or style pizza, which I know Dave Portnoy and other pizza snob people don't like, but for me that's the best way to eat it. And there was this spot in Morristown, and I can't remember its name now for the life of me. But it's like a local pizza joint that made the absolutely greatest sauce that went along with these Napoli style pizzas, and like they would give you a side of the sauce as well that you could dip your crust in, and it was like spiced. It was like spiced with like I don't know, like oregano, and then like some sort of like citrusy something that it had this tang to it. And if I ever go back, I need to eat there again because it was the greatest pizza I think I've ever had.
Oh man, that sounds so good. Next time in Morristown, I'll be on the lookout.
It's right in the center circle. It's like there used to be like what do they call it? Like a poke bowl place, and it was right next to the poke bowl place, right next to the church. I can't remember the name of it though. I know I could find it if I was in Morristown. I would go there instantly. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will keep you updated if I find it. Thank you again, Tariq. Everybody, please have a great week.